God is good, and the information about the 3 tank classes has been released by Visionary Realms, and we've already discussed all we know about the Paladin and the Warrior. But I've been holding out on all of you because I haven't yet talked about the Dire Lord, the controversial, mythical Dire Lord. Well, today we're going to dive into it and see what is going on with this dark, blood-obsessed tank. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing if you are into Pantheon Rise of the Fallen and want to consume some Pantheon-related content during our long march to launch, because that's pretty much what this channel talks about. Anyway, let's get to it and let's talk about the Dire Lord. So the Dire Lord looks to be all about crippling and manipulating their blood, the Dire Lord's blood, also the enemy's blood, in order to do damage and keep themselves alive. Somebody please tell your local Dire Lord that playing with blood isn't cool, man. The Dire Lord's group row is of course tank and utility. The Dire Lord will be using one-hand edged or two-handed edged. Here's where the internet is losing their mind. The Dire Lord wears cloth, leather, or mail. No plate here, folks. Move along. The Dire Lord will be using methods in its arsenal or abilities to stay alive, it looks like. As we move through this, I think most of us will agree that the Dire Lord looks to be the damage-dealing tank of the 3 and the one most resistant against magic. They have specific tools that will probably align with very specific or certain fights. Their combat resource is Essence, which we will be hearing all about with the abilities, but basically the Dire Lord will be getting essence from the damage they do, and a percentage of that damage comes back to the Dire Lord as essence, and also gaining essence from taking damage as well. There are abilities that grant the Dire Lord essence and abilities that require the Dire Lord to use essence. Now let's talk about the Dire Lord's abilities, shall we? Passive abilities first. Relentless Vitality. This is a passive that allows for the lower the percentage of health the Dire Lord has, the higher the regeneration gets. So as the Dire Lord gets closer to death, his health ticks up faster, naturally making the Dire Lord harder to kill. I can see this being an issue on a hard-hitting boss, but perhaps combined with the ability Dark Revenge on critical hits though, well, we'll get to that in a minute. But I can see the benefits of this definitely on regular mobs. Sanguine Cloak. This is another passive that basically just makes the Dire Lord more resistant against magical effects. This is a common theme with the Dire Lord. This ability and others has me thinking that the Dire Lord is definitely meant to soak up and hold and main tank bosses that do their damage with mainly magic. This will become more and more clear as we go along. Dark Revenge. Okay, this is the passive I was talking about, that combined with the Relentless Vitality, I can see something here. So, Dark Revenge, this passive basically gives the Dire Lord the ability to restore health, a percentage of the damage that the Dire Lord receives from a critical hit. Now combine this with Relentless Vitality passive, and you can see that a hard hit from a crit actually allows the Dire Lord not only begin regenerating health faster because of Relentless Vitality, but on top of that, begin to get a bit of a heal from the attack after the crit. The last of the absolute passives, alright? This basically makes the effects of fear inflicted on the Dire Lord cut in half. I mean, come on, you can't scare a Dire Lord. I mean, they play in blood all day. Come on, why would you even try that? Harm Shield. Okay, so this ability basically uses the Dire Lord's blood. It, like, comes ripping, like, to the surface of their skin, and any physical damage within a 6-meter radius will cause the Dire Lord's blood to damage the enemy back. Yeah, Dire Lord blood is dangerous, and it makes me wonder if an effect like Bleed status would actually help a Dire Lord. In other words, if the Dire Lord has Bleed, is that like naturally bad for the mob? I mean, his blood seems to be damaging or helping, and as we'll get to in a minute. So you probably wouldn't want to make a Dire Lord bleed, right? Or at least that makes sense to me. Very interesting concept though. Provoking phantoms. Okay, so basically, the longer a Dire Lord holds aggro, the more fear is going to be applied to the enemy. It also appears as the aggro level will grow with it as well, naturally. So it will increase the hate that the Dire Lord has, and also more and more fear afflicted upon the mob. Dire Mark. This one reminds me of an ability Paladins had in Dark Age of Camelot. Basically, you can mark a member of the group so that when he or she takes damage, a percentage of that damage comes back to the Dire Lord, splitting the damage, which is really awesome for duo tanking and to help absorb a heavy hit that you know is coming. Very cool. Essence Thief. Okay, so this one is a little complicated because what it exactly does is determined by what type of entity that you're doing it on. As in, it will have a different effect on humanoids, animals, insects versus ghastly, etc. But it does switch essence levels with the enemy, refilling the Dire Lord's essence. But does incorporeal or ghost type beings even have essence? Maybe they are pure essence. I have a feeling that the Dire Lord will have to be cautious of the effects, some good for some types of mobs, some possibly bad if used all willy-nilly. We'll see. Baleful Severing. This ability basically makes the enemy unable to dodge, resist, or block the next move, leaving an opening for a good clean hit on the mob, and then that hit refills the Dire Lord's essence to full. Very cool. Grip of Torment. You gotta love these ability names, by the way. So basically, this one will turn the mob's essence against themselves, meaning that they can't be healed for the duration, but it uses some of the Dire Lord's essence to do the ability. Blood Fiend. This is useful for when the Dire Lord is poisoned or diseased. He can give the same debuff to the enemy. Try to poison a Dire Lord? Are you crazy? Leaden Blood. So a Dire Lord can apparently turn the enemy's blood into a thick, heavy, weighted down effect, meaning that the mob can't move. That'll be cool, because you can't chase me through the zone now. This ability will also use some of the Dire Lord's essence. Canopy of Blood. Using this ability basically just splatters the Dire Lord's blood out in a circle AoE to protect those around you from magical effects, making them all immune. This is an interesting way to protect your group. You bleed on them. This also uses essence. Sanguine Shield. Here the Dire Lord uses their own blood as a shield in front of them, lowering the damage of magic attacks for 2 seconds. And maybe not taking any damage at all, which will depend on how high your constitution stat is. This ability uses essence. Deafening Whisper. Basically, this is a psychic type attack that scares the enemy and silences them, so no magic attacks for the enemy. Blood States. Okay, so the Blood States are something the Dire Lord can activate, and there's basically 3 of them, so let's cover them. Number 1, Nightmare Blood State. During this blood state, the Dire Lord can hold aggro really well, since all damage the Dire Lord does while in this state converts to hate as well. Number 2, Essence Leech. During this blood state, the Dire Lord can get some extra damage in and heal up some as they go, but their chance at doing critical hits increases in this state. So basically every crit the Dire Lord does, he has a higher chance to do a critical state while in this blood state, remember, and then a percentage of that damage is healed back to the Dire Lord. Number 3, Torrential Veins. During this blood state, the Dire Lord can get back some health and essence, as they will regenerate both at a faster rate. Now, on to the melee abilities for the Dire Lord. Thresh. This basically carves the enemy open and makes them bleed. Dot or damage over time. Also, you gain essence from this. Sanguine Blade. This makes the enemy take more magic damage and drains their mana, meaning less magic attacks they can do. You also steal some essence for yourself while you're at it. You dark, scary Dire Lord beast, you. Edge of Midnight. This one drains a buff the enemy has and gives it to the Dire Lord, so that's cool. Basically, if an enemy or a mob has a buff, the Dire Lord can take it from them. Well, I think that the enemy will still have the buff, but it will also apply that buff to the Dire Lord. This one uses Essence. Abyssal Strike. This ability just goes right on through full damage as if the mob was butt naked. What I'm trying to say is that it ignores the enemy's armor. It also uses Essence. Splatter. Alright, so this is probably the grossest of all the abilities that the Dire Lord has, which is hard to believe because we've already covered so much. But alright, so this ability is a way to spread the diseases your group has placed on the mob targeted. So because you splatter out the mob's blood, it's like an AoE effect to the surrounding mobs, giving them the same debuffs. I plan on using this ability to train my children on the dangers of AIDS/HIV. Kids, you see this ability your dad just did? You see those guys dying a slow, agonizing death? That's how diseases spread. Don't stand in giant waterfall splatters of blood and guts, kids. Don't do it. You see that? Anyway, Splatter uses Essence. And that wraps up the Dire Lord information that we have so far. Do you see what I was talking about as far as the Dire Lord being a very blood magic based tank? And since they don't wear plate, they will have to use their abilities much more, and I believe they'll have more damage than the Warrior or the Paladin as well. But their abilities allow for a lot of room to keep their health up. Dire Lords sound like the cool tank, you know, the edgy, creepy, wears all black and hangs out in the corner of the room in silence, brooding and creeping you out. We all know those tanks, right? Or you could take an alternate perspective, or possibly the same. They might look kind of creepy and edgy and dark and mysterious, but really, isn't a Dire Lord just that emo kid that cuts himself? But seriously, the Dire Lord seems really cool and will definitely be the tank for fights with a lot of magic attacks. Are any of you planning on maining a Dire Lord? What has you hooked and you have to just get all bloody and crazy and infect people? Anyway, that wraps up the Dire Lord for now. If you enjoyed the video, please drop me some love, a like, a comment, a share to social media or friends, or even run out and get a tattoo of my face on your face. Whatever you feel is necessary, and consider subscribing if you'd like more Pantheon related content. Until next time, God bless and happy gaming.